Hi everyone, welcome to this video, this YouTube channel if you're new. Today we're going to do some really nice hip stretching. So, supplies that you might find helpful. All of the props that we use in yoga they're kind of like nice to have, so you don't need anything except yourself, maybe some comfy clothes. I like to have blankets, like lots of them. Some are very useful, some are just for comfort. I'll let you know when that is appropriate. I have three. I actually like to have three. You'll see why later when I employ all of them. And something else that's nice to have, especially if you are a little tighter in the hips, is a block or maybe even two yoga blocks or something block shaped. It doesn't have to be an actual yoga block. Something that's maybe a bolster if you have a yoga bolster. I'm looking up because I have bolsters there. You can't see them, but they're there. And I could get it down, but then I'd have to stand up. Not saying I'm lazy. Well, sometimes I'm lazy. And if there was ever a time or a place to be lazy, this is it. Yin yoga. It's a wonderful aspect of yoga. Anywho, it's like something that's like block shaped. Bolster is like a block but longer. Okay. So to get started, we'll start in Virasana Hero pose. So for this one, if you're looking at this going, my legs would break, then don't head into that just yet. If you do have extra mobility in the ankles, knees, and hips, then go ahead and get started. Knees together, feet apart, sitting between the feet. If this is painful, do not attempt to force anything that would not feel good, especially with the knees. We want to be nice to our knees. We need them. So this is where you might sit up and place a block or maybe even two beneath the hips and then sit back. So we'll be here for a little bit, like a minute or two. So if you're grinning and bearing it, it's too much. So elevate a little bit more. Sometimes it's a combination of a bolster and a blanket or two blankets and a block, that kind of a thing. So just find out what feels okay for you. A little bit of discomfort is what we're looking for. Massive discomfort, not so much. You might even find that it's almost okay, in which case you maybe want to place a blanket, sort of unfold it, and just place that beneath your entire yoga pose. So it'd be underneath your whole leg. Getting yourself all situated. When you're ready, we'll begin. This is going to be our centering posture. So in all of our yoga classes, we will start with just one posture that may or may not be actually comfortable. This one is one of them, and we'll close our eyes. So if you're like, oh, wow, I'm not feeling comfortable at all, take a moment, readjust, jump back in when you can. Otherwise, sitting up nice and tall, almost like the spine is floating. And with the eyes closed, just taking a moment to feel centered and grounded. What that means is just feeling the ground beneath you. So feel the mat beneath you. Feeling the temperature of the air in your skin. Just taking a moment. Centering is important for yoga because it's a nice delineation. Your life before your yoga practice, maybe you were rushing around. And it gives your body a chance to just slow down. Starting to tune inward, which sounds really deep and philosophical, but truly all that means is feeling your body. What do you feel? Especially if you are feeling a bit of discomfort, it's in our nature to try and distract ourselves, think of something else. But for right now, we want to feel while we're feeling the sensations and just be. And in our last few moments here, set an intention for your practice. So an intention is just a quality or a virtue or something you wish to cultivate on or off the mat. Maybe that's inner peace, or maybe it's more patience, or maybe you're looking for more flexibility. Just picking one of the many, many benefits of yoga and allowing ourselves to resonate with that before we really get started. From here, take a deep inhale through the nose. Nice smooth exhale through the nose. Again, inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. Slowly blink the eyes open. To come out, it's important to move slowly. So especially for some of these deeper stretches, slowly, slowly heading forward to hands and knees. And I like to straighten one leg behind me. Sometimes my knee pops a little bit, and then placing it back to hands and knees, straighten the other leg. The legs might feel a little bit weird. That's totally okay. Taking as much time you need doing that. When you're ready, coming into seated with the feet forward, heading into our next stretch, which is called caterpillar. So from here, I'm just going to grab my little timer. I'm going to try to keep it so you can't see it. Maybe you can. I feel like it's pretty little on your screen though. So for caterpillar, it's basically just a forward fold, but before we fold forward, keep in mind that we want to lift up nice and tall, and we do not want to move anything. So there's sometimes a tendency to want to move the flesh away from our seated position, but we want to be on the flesh, like on the squish completely. I'll let you know why as soon as we head into our pose. So we lift up nice and tall, and then folding forward, reaching for shins, ankles, or toes, whatever you can reach. And from here, this is where you might want to use some of your props as well. You might want to stack them up on your legs and just relax completely. I'll get our timer going and really soften and melt into this one. So as you're getting into this one, the reason for not pulling the flesh away is because our hamstrings, so those muscles on the backs of the legs, are attached to the bone with tendons. Little anatomy lesson if you don't already know this. If you do, that's fantastic. But if not, it's not common knowledge. So when you pull the flesh away, so if these are your tendons, and then let's say hamstrings are here, so my hands are tendons. If you pull the flesh away, now the tendons move outward, but not evenly. So now the innermost hamstrings tendons are pulling more so than the outer tendons, and then you fold forward, increasing that tension in just one of the tendons. That can actually cause some pain in the upper leg. So low buttocks, high leg pain is quite common in yoga, and I really believe one of those things might be the issue. So softening and melting into it. And even the neck, just letting it go. Maybe taking a couple deep breaths. And depending on the time of day, you might even feel this right up to the neck and the whole length of the back and through the legs. Sometimes I don't feel it so much in the neck and back if it's later in the day or if I've been stretching a lot recently. But if I haven't been, then I tend to feel that the full length of the back body. Either way is good. Just seeing if you can soften here. Trying to keep your attention on your mat and the spaces that feel the stretch. One deep inhale here through the nose. And exhale through the nose. Let's just do one more inhale. And exhale. Scoop the belly in and allow the spine to float all the way up. You can even use your hands to help you, coming all the way back up. And from here, heading into just a little bit of a counter stretch. So leaning back onto the hands and swiveling the fingers so they point towards the toes. So fingers pointing forward. From here, straightening through the arms. Maybe they are all the way straight, maybe not. And then lifting the heart up to the sky. Couple deep breaths here. And if you're feeling up to it, even maybe lowering the head back, nice and gentle. You'll notice that if you don't have as much shoulder mobility, your chest might be a bit lower, in which case it just won't feel comfortable to allow the head to go back. But if you have a fair amount of flexibility and the chest lifts so that it's quite high to the sky, you'll notice that it's actually less comfortable to keep the head neutral. And to come out, slowly, slowly reversing course. And coming all the way up. Our next posture is called butterfly. So bringing the soles of the feet together and drawing them in towards the body. There's a random fluff that just landed. I feel like that movie Avatar. And there's like the seeds of the tree. Anyways, I'm really easily amused. Something shiny. Okay, so the feet are in, lifting up tall. Inhale to lengthen. On the exhale, reaching forward. So again, this is sometimes where it's nice to have some blocks just to sort of hang out on. Closing the eyes. I'll get our timer started. We're not here too long. But do see if you can feel as the body gives you more space over the minute or two we're here. So usually the first 30 seconds or so, our body's like, right, when we find our edge. But then you'll notice, and it's usually on the exhale, the body kind of melts. Ooh. So see if you can notice that point. And by now you might be feeling that the body's allowing you to relax a little bit. If you're a little extra tight in the hips, you might find you want to be up on a blanket, maybe two with the hips, and you'll notice that that gives you a little bit more forward movement. As always, we want to find as much stillness as possible, unless something doesn't feel quite right, in which case, absolutely move, shift, alter. If something feels like, that doesn't feel quite right, that's your body telling you, we need to move now. And it's actually a good thing to start listening to our bodies. We often don't. We just sort of forge ahead because we're busy, got stuff to do. But this is a great opportunity to really tune in. Our last few moments here to see if you can feel when the body gives you a little bit more space. It doesn't happen just once. It's often 2 or 3 times in the duration of our stretch. It'll seem like things are tight and then our body goes, oh, and then it feels tight again and then it'll loosen. And it feels like while our body isn't allowing us to move forward, we're plateauing. But nothing could be further from the truth. When your body's not moving, so much is happening on like a cellular microscopic level. There's so many muscle fibers that are so tiny and they're all doing their bit to lengthen, and then the body will physically and remarkably be able to move, but only after a whole bunch of things that we can't even see takes place. Slowly, slowly, coming all the way out, heading now into straddle. So for this one, I like to use blankets underneath my heels, or you can turn sideways and have your heels on your mat. I like the extra added cushion of a blanket. Also, the blanket on my floor is pretty slippery, so I can move, or they can move as I get more mobility. So, shift and turn however you want to be situated on your space. And my third blanket, I like just as like comfort, like moral support, because you can, and there's no shame in that. So I'll get our timer going. All we're doing for this one is sending the legs as far to the sides as they'll go today. Inhale, lifting up tall. Exhale, allow the torso to move forward. If it doesn't, try elevating the hips on. I wouldn't do a block for this one. You can, but then the knees are hanging in space. So if you feel comfortable doing so, then by all means, but it's nice to be fairly close to the ground. So I would do maybe a folded up blanket. And if you're still not able to move forward, then simply bring the hands behind you and allow the hands and the arms to support the pose. If you do have extra mobility, then start to head forward. Either way, we're aiming to find our edge and not push past it. So finding that space where you do feel a nice stretch, not too much. Oftentimes we can fairly easily find that if we're really body aware, but if we're not, and there's no shame in that. So often people are like, I don't know what that means, therefore it's wrong. And that's so not true. I've been doing yoga almost my whole life, and other people have been doing maybe cooking almost their whole life. And I can barely pull together boiled water. So back to finding your edge. What we're looking for is enough of a stretch that you almost need to focus. Like you want to really feel like, okay. And if you start thinking about what's happening after you're done this video or what's happening later with your life, maybe making a to-do list, something like that, you might not be feeling the stretch enough. But if you stop breathing, you might have gone too far. So a little bit of like a, okay, there we are, but you can still breathe. Once you've found that spot, try to maintain that spot. So that's why our pose will be constantly moving. And again, it's not always a slow, steady progression. It's often it feels like it's not moving, and then all of a sudden it moves deeper. Or it might just sort of be with every exhale, you go a little bit further. Every body is different and every pose is different as well. Couple more slow, deep breaths here, tuning inward as we do. And to come out, even if you feel like, well, I'm not very flexible, I didn't go very far, still move slowly. Okay, like we want to prepare the body for when we are very flexible. And even if we're not very flexible, if you're feeling a stretch and you're at your edge, it's still a big stretch for you. So always honoring the body by moving nice and slow. And then our next pose is called shoelaces. So this one you might also want a couple blankets or a block. So for this one, let's bring the feet forward to start. There's a couple different ways to enter this posture. I'm going to do the easiest one today. So we start by keeping the left leg straight. Take the right leg and place it on top of the left. Knee stacks over knee. If this feels just fine, then we can go further. If you're like, oh, that's enough, then just stay here. If you'd like to go further, lean over to the left side, away from the bottom leg, and then scooch it underneath as well. You can sort of heel toe it in. Wherever you get stuck, just hang out here. If you are available, if there is availability, that's a sentence, right? If available, there we go. See, feeling zen already. Lowering both hips towards the ground. So if you've done that and you're feeling a little bit of a stretch, but you are a little bit more mobile, you might notice that your knees aren't completely together. So in that case, you might want to lean forward and kind of scooch the knees together, just a little shift, and then head back. You can get a little bit of a tighter shoelace. And if you're not there yet, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just hang tight where you are. And if you're almost able to touch the ground with the hips, but not quite, you might want to lean forward, place a blanket or two or a block beneath the hips, and then sit back down again. So just taking your few moments to get all set up. And when you're ready, lifting up just like we do in the other postures, nice and tall, and like we did in our first posture, like the spine's almost floating up. And at the same time, the hips feel grounded. So doing our best to have equal weight in each sit bone. So that one is probably going to feel like it's floating up. And if it is, that's okay. Eventually getting that sit bone to be solidly on the earth. Same thing again. Tuning inward. Even closing the eyes. It really helps to bring everything inward and on your mat. And in Yin Yoga, we're essentially looking for just three things. The first thing is finding our edge, which we already talked about. Then the second step is finding stillness. With the exception, of course, if something doesn't feel right, we are absolutely able to adjust and move and then try to find that stillness once again, once we've found it. The opposite might, of course, be true, where you find the body gives you more space. You deepen the posture, so that would be technically moving as well. But always bringing it back to stillness as efficiently as we can. And if you're in this posture and looking for a bit more of a stretch, you can start to walk the hands forward. Last few moments here. See if you can sink and melt a little bit more into those hips. And to come out, inhale to lengthen. Exhale here. Scoop the belly in and float all the way up. So from here, all we do is undo the shoelaces. If that's easier for you, go ahead. Otherwise, you can reverse course, bottom leg straight and top leg straight. Between sides, just taking a moment. Just a couple little knee taps maybe. And then we'll ravel up on the other side. So we'll start by keeping the right leg straight, this time left on top. And once you get the one knee on top of the other, maybe, now the second side might be different than the first, so keep that in mind too. Bring that bottom leg beneath, maybe it's a little shift and a scooch. Taking as much care and attention on that second side as we did the first. And when you're ready, closing the eyes. And once again, finding length in the spine, almost like it's floating. So instead of like a rigid sitting up tall, it's more of there's a string attached to the top of your head. And allowing the spine to float upwards. At the same time, the hips are feeling grounded. So there's a bit of a dual energy, but it's very light feeling. And of course, whenever you're ready to deepen the posture, go ahead. Remembering to tune inward. If your mind starts to wander, bringing it back. And see if you can deliberately soften into the spaces that feel the stretch. So really relaxing and even breathing into those spaces. What that means is just focusing on those spaces as we inhale. And on the exhale, really softening in those spaces. Last few moments on our second side. See if you can melt just a little bit more. If not, that's okay. Melting doesn't necessarily mean visually more so into the pose. It just means relaxing into it. And slowly inhale to lengthen. Exhale, scoop the belly in, floating all the way back up, and then reversing course. And feeling a lot more mobile already. Things are loosening up a little bit. So just a little counter stretch. We've done a lot of external rotation in the hips. Leaning back onto the hands, don't worry about the hand position, just leaning back onto them. The feet are mat width apart. Let's take the right leg and allow the knee to tip inward. So what we're doing here is not trying to stretch the knee, but rather really targeting the hip. If you are feeling it in the knee, see if you can adjust and really isolate the hip. And then nice and smooth, other side. And just a couple rounds. Right knee moves down. Maybe it goes all the way down to the ground. Maybe it hardly moves at all. Maybe you're finding this one's way easier than the last one. So everyone's a little bit different. Just one more round. Right and left. Here we go. To the next one, which is just as much fun as the last one, if you can believe it. So this one is called square. So I'm going to show you first the one with, if your hips are really tight, you'll start here. So same position as our last windshield wipers. Leaning back onto the hands, don't worry about the technique. Cross the right ankle over the left knee. This might be enough. If you need just a little bit more, leaning upwards towards the shin. If that's enough for you, hang tight there. If you need more, then what we do is you can bend the knees. Place the left leg so that the shin is parallel to the top edge of your mat. And then take the other leg and bring the ankle on top of the knee, supporting the top knee, and allow the knee to fall downwards. Now, this is where you might want to get more blankets, maybe a few of them to support, maybe one under this knee. Be sure the knees feel 100% okay. And when you do, inhale, lifting up tall. And on the exhale, soften and melt into it. If you're very mobile, maybe even walking forward with the hands. Slow, deep breathing here. So remember, if it's too much in this position, leaning back onto the hands for that first variation. This one is interesting because this specific pose, you'll find more progression faster than any other pose, in my experience anyways. I believe that's because there's so many muscles connected to the hips that if all of them just open up and become more flexible by like a 0.5 millimeter, altogether that's a lot. So this one's kind of fun to at least feel like you're moving forward. Remembering that that's not the goal. The goal is to feel better, more space in the body, and it really does feel better. So closing the eyes, and we'll go inward for a little bit. I'm going to stop talking so that you can really feel this pose. It's one of our last for this sequence. And to come out, moving nice and slow. And releasing both legs. Maybe a couple little knee taps between sides. But not too long. We got a second side to do. So same thing again. If you're in that first variation, preparing by bending the knees, left ankle crosses over right knee, and allowing the heart to move towards that top leg. Otherwise, we're bending now the right leg on the bottom, and then cross the left ankle over the knee, and allowing that knee to softly lower down, situating blankets, blocks, whatever you need, and then melting into it. Closing the eyes. Tuning inward. And slowly come on all the way up and releasing the pose. Maybe a couple little knee taps after that one. And preparing for just our final stretch before Shavasana. Heading back for a nice spinal twist. So laying back, and with the arms out to a T position, palms facing down, we'll do twisted roots. So right leg crosses all the way over left, and then The hips shift to the right as the knees move over to the left, keeping that right shoulder on the ground. If that's too much, re-enter using just one-legged twist. So the left leg remains down to the ground as the right knee hugs in and then lowers to the left. Either variation, be sure that the hips shift back to midline. So hips are going to the right as the knees go to the left, so that the spine is in a nice neutral line. Just a few moments here for a nice different kind of a stretch after all our hip opening. And scooping the belly in, press the low back into the floor, unraveling, unwinding. In between sides, we'll hug the knees in and gently rock from side to side. And other side, so arms are out in a T position. This time left crosses over right, hips shift to the left as the knees go to the right. Be sure that left shoulder is glued to the ground and softening into the spine. And scoop the belly in, pressing the low back into the floor, unraveling, unwinding, and then hugging both knees into your chest, giving them an extra little squeeze to release the back. And release. And preparing for Shavasana. So right from here, feel free to extend the legs onto the ground. But if your back requires a little bit of extra support today, feel free to keep those knees bent with the feet on the floor. Otherwise, legs are extended, as are the arms, palms facing up, and closing the eyes. Softening everything, but especially through the neck and the shoulders and all the way down the arms. Letting the fingers softly curl. Soften through the face, around the eyes, and even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. Starting to come back. Wiggle the fingers and the toes. And gently roll your head from side to side. And reaching your arms above head on the floor, give yourself a big stretch. Feeling totally refreshed. And one at a time, bending the knees. And gently roll over to the right side. And do pause there for a few moments as you come back. And when you feel ready, slowly start to press yourself all the way up to a comfortable seated position, taking all the time you need. But when you arrive, palms facing up on the knees, inhale, sitting up tall, and exhale, softly close the eyes. Taking those final moments to thank yourself for showing up to your practice today and taking care of you. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and joining in. I'll see you next time.